All right, today we're talking about how to monetize innovation in a changing world and economy and sell that to other companies. We'll explain what we mean by that in a moment. My guest today is Seth Casden. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and you know if you listen that every week we get to talk to smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. We've had Netflix and Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard. Go check out the archives and you can check out those great episodes. And of course, this episode brought to you by our company Rise 25 and Podcast Copilot, where we'll help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. You can learn more at Rise 25 or email us at support@rise25.com. All right, my guest here today, first of all, quick shout out to Anna Redmond, who is a past guest on this show, introduced me to today's guest. His name is Seth Casden. He's founder and CEO at Hologenix. And Hologenix is a material science company, which you might not have heard of before, but their product, CELLIANT, you may have heard of before. In fact, if you've ever seen an Under Armour shirt, maybe CELLIANT went into it. So it's a company that has really innovated with material science and textiles, and they put that product into other companies, like I mentioned, like Under Armour, which we see here in Seth's shirt that he's wearing here today. But Seth has an interesting background, having worked first in private equity, then gone into running this company. Usually it's the other way around. People start a company, build it up, sell it, and then they go into private equity. He did it a bit backwards, but he's got a degree from Pepperdine University. He's a frequent speaker at different industry conferences. And Seth, it's a pleasure to have you here today. And I love to, know a little bit more about our guests and their background, what they were like as a kid. And you said that as a kid, you and your brother would play business. Your mom would give you voided checks, which I think is the first time I've heard before kids playing with voided checks. Usually it's toys, maybe remote control cars, but okay, voided checks. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for the incredible introduction and for having me on your show. And yeah, growing up, my brother and I kind of geeked out on staplers and receipts and writing each other bad checks for buying the bed or the bike. And it was just a lot of fun. I think the idea of having a transaction and being able to buy something and resell it for more. Garage sales were a big event for us. We'd always be begging our parents, can we have a garage sale? Can we have a garage sale? And, get everything out and get our cut. So just kind of born innately with this idea of like, let's make something happen and be a mover and shaker.
Yeah, that's great. And tell me then, you actually had a stepfather who had a law firm, and I guess continuing with the theme of writing checks to one another, you went into billing and filing, which I'm a recovering lawyer, so I can say this, but usually that ends up they don't go to law school, which I see you didn't. So I probably had the desired effect. You were scared enough that you were like, forget this. But tell us a little bit about that experience working in the law firm.
Yeah, just enough. So my summers in high school were spent working at my stepfather's law firm and kind of doing all the paperwork and the billing. And I think the highlight of that was once I had my learner's permit, I was able to drive him in and be the chauffeur. So at least I had a couple hours a day where I was doing something really fun. Probably ran a few red lights, but always got there safely without any incidents. From that, having a business degree and just trying to understand the value of money and economics, I was able to interview and actually through the relationship with my stepfather, start working at Colony Capital and understanding how deals are evaluated. They have a mandate for anything that was real estate backed. So, how to value assets and looking at just so many different opportunities really sparked a fire for me to create my own. And that was a great window into looking at a diverse set of investments. But at the end of the day, climbing the corporate ladder and just sort of going through that was not really what drove me. I really liked working with small teams and finding a concept or an idea. And my first few companies really didn't amount to anything, but just kind of stuck with it and landed on Hologenix. And really
tell us the origin story behind it, because you somehow met the guy who had the idea behind Hologenix.
Yeah, so David Hornick, the inventor and founder, I was introduced to him through my father, and just really connected with what he was doing. And the idea is that there's a lot of ways to affect healing and recovery in the body. And traditionally Western medicine usually have to take a pill for something, although now physical therapy and rehab and understanding movement, calisthenics, and how to rehab muscle groups. But if you hurt your shoulder or your hip, it's not the same as like your arm or your leg where they put it in a cast. And so David's grandmother was having a bad shoulder, bad hip, didn't want to get the replacement surgery. And we started experimenting with infrared emitting minerals and how you can support and augment healing really just through wavelengths of light. Infrared is beyond the visible. We don't see it with our eyes, but it can have a powerful effect on how our bodies respond to healing and circulation.
So help me as a non-technical person. How does that translate to a textile that helps with that and with recovery?
Sure. So if you think of our bodies as actually like a machine, we're really inefficient. Our core temperature is 98.6. So we're eating and supporting our lifestyle through our diet that allows our body to maintain that temperature. But there's an incredible amount of heat that goes out into the environment. Most of our life is spent in a temperature below 98.6. And so there's about 100 watts or 100 joules of energy that's being given off at any given second. And that energy just dissipates into the environment. And there are certain minerals, silica and quartz as examples, that absorb heat the way a sponge absorbs water and convert the heat into infrared. And infrared is this usable form. It's basically another energy source for the body. Traditionally, we think of what we eat and what we drink as our fuel, but your body also makes vitamin D from sunlight as an example. And infrared is another energy source, another food source for the body. And so what we do at CELLIANT is we take really literally millions of minerals ground to a micron. So the width of your hair is about 100 microns. So 1/100th the thickness of your hair is the particle size. And fun fact, polyester, nylon, viscose start out as a liquid. So we add the minerals into this liquid mix, like adding sugar into a cake. Once you bake the minerals, the fabric, it's permanent. It doesn't wash out. It can't wear off. As long as I have the shirt, it's going to be working. The minerals absorb the heat from the body and convert it to infrared and put it back in, which causes this increase in circulation.
Ah, got it. Okay. And so you connect with this founder who has this idea. And is it a classic case of kind of a technical founder who has an idea, doesn't really appreciate the value of it, doesn't know how to market it? What was that? What were the initial meetings like?
Yeah, it's been a journey. David was selling shirts basically out of his car that had this technology into it. And when we got together, we talked about like, what's the long-term vision? Like, do we want to try and compete with Under Armour or be another Under Armour, or would we rather partner with them and leverage their brand and their reach? And so ultimately we landed on this model of licensing the technology to brands and not trying to reinvent ourselves. The need for innovation is basically built into every company that's out there, and how do they differentiate themselves? And so we provide an option for brands to really stand out amongst their peers. And so when David and I got together, we said, what is a kind of long-term vision? How do we grow this? And we really saw the first opportunity are in athletes and weekend warriors and people that are just looking to be less sore on Monday morning, less aches and pains. But the idea that you could improve your performance, just by boosting circulation was one that, really resonated with me, and I kind of latched onto and, was on board from the beginning.
And was that a hard sell for a company like an Under Armour or other big companies? I mean, I can think of so many different objections. Like, one, they're a much larger company. So, why wouldn't they just develop these types of technologies themselves? And then, also, why are they, why would they want to partner with a small company like you? Can you provide enough, I guess, volume? I don't know if you're manufacturing it for them. What were the objections like? What did they say when you came to them with this idea? You're basically reinventing something like a shirt that has existed for a long time.
Well, those are great questions, and you hit on two of the objections, right out of the gate. And my naivety in my 20s, I'm like, oh, this is great, it's gonna work, everyone's gonna love it. Oh, so and so Bob bought a shirt and ran the best marathon of his life. You're not gonna sell to these brands on user testimonials. So there's a lot of science that's gone into it. But I think, frankly, like Under Armour is a brand, using them to continue this analogy, that needs to deliver a performance product to the consumer. And so it's in their best interest to find out who's the best in this space to do that. And so, for us, I think, being able to deliver a proven science and a proven claim set is really what differentiates us. And so, the objections are, does it really work? It's invisible. Like, how do I know it's working? And so, we've addressed those systematically and really, I think, done a good job of solidifying the science. Infrared's been around as long as the Earth's been here. These minerals have been in the ground. The understanding of it and the validation has taken, time, and honestly, in the last 20 years, has made a lot of progress. Infrared saunas are now, used pretty widely. If you're a yoga practitioner, they have infrared lamps a lot of times in the hot yoga setting. And we're understanding that infrared, it's not a heating effect. It's not about just making you warm. It's actually about boosting your circulation and helping your body thermoregulate itself. So, depending on the brand and the company, the objections could be anything from legal to does it work to the manufacturing. It's very hard to make a product that has minerals embedded in it. But we've been able to really overcome those challenges one at a time.
And it seems funny considering, it's ultimately selling a shirt product or, or a performance like shorts or something. But did you, like, you say developing the science, did you fund like double blind clinical studies and in order to provide, proof? How did you demonstrate that it did what you say it does?
That's exactly what we did. And our largest study is on 153 people. And what we're measuring is tissue oxygen levels. And that's an indirect measurement of circulation. So the thinking goes, the more oxygen in your tissue, the more circulation, blood flow going to that area. And in our study that I mentioned, we had over an 8% average increase. So, we really
that's a measurable, that's got to be a meaningful difference when you're running a marathon or you're competing in the Super Bowl or something.
Absolutely. I mean, when you put it in that context, like you look at the Winter Olympics, there are people that miss the podium by 1,000th of a second.
Yeah.
The more elite you are, the bigger the significance of the game.
Right. Now, the funny thing about this is you, when you first came into this company, the idea was that you were going to be a passive investor. So, but you also ultimately, over the last 22 years, have served as CEO during different stints in its history. So, what first led you to have to step in and serve as in more of an operational role?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, because you're right. Again, going back to my 20s, I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is going to be fantastic. When can I start counting my money? And then behold, like it's not that simple. And
Yeah.
just because somebody has a great idea doesn't mean they know how to run a company. And, there's a lot more to it. So in 2005 was my first opportunity to kind of step in and take the reins, and did that for a few years, and then thought I found somebody better and turned it over. And then after a few more years, it's been a long haul, and some people don't have the patience or the dedication to kind of see it through, and they're looking, for a return on a shorter time frame than, doing something like this requires. And so ultimately, I kind of gave myself an education and in terms of operations. And the irony is that to be excellent, you have to learn from experience, and experience comes from failures. Quote unquote, what people might call failures. So made a lot of mistakes along the way, and fortunately, I wasn't outcome determinant, and was able to take those experiences and just continue to push us forward in a constructive and positive way. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, and I'm curious because you had come from the world of private equity, which typically has I think it's like a 5 to 7 year time frame where they want to turn around and resell the company. In what ways have you operated Hologenix, CELLIANT differently because of your experience having worked in PE previously?
I love that question, John. Thank you. And that's exactly right. And that's, that can be the downfall. If you take private equity money and you're not able to deliver on that time frame, you'll lose your company. Working in private equity, you realize, 7 or 8, 9 out of 10 companies don't succeed. So that teaches you a certain, first of all, reality. It's not, just because you have a great idea and a great product doesn't mean it's going to work. But it also, I think, humbles you in the sense that it gives you the freedom to just give your best. If it works, amazing. If it doesn't, it wasn't supposed to in the first place. And so you kind of lose that sensitivity to the outside noise, and you can just focus on what you believe and what your calling is. And so for me, it was really clear, I believed in this, I was passionate, and I saw the value. And there's going to be bumps along the way, but I'm just going to stick with it. And to the point you're making, we've been able to do the opposite. We've been able to invest in a study that might take 2 years, and you're not going to see a quarterly return. And that's something you often hear about public companies. They always have to play to the next quarter. For us, having been friends and family funded, we were able to say, okay, we're going to invest in a performance study, and it's going to take 9 months to do and another 6 months to get published. And then after that, hopefully a brand will be interested, and it might take another year for that brand to be on board. So our runway and our time frame of measuring success is much longer than what you might see with a typical private equity investment or public company.
Yeah, yeah. So it allows you to kind of have that longer view. But I skipped over a part of your story that was a little perplexing to me. So you go to, first of all, you went to high school to the next high school over from me. I went to high school in Calabasas. You went to Viewpoint. Viewpoint is a very prestigious shishi private school in Los Angeles. You went to Pepperdine from there, another prestigious private university. And then you're managing a reggae rock band before you go into private equity. So how does that play into the story?
Yeah. So after I graduated Pepperdine, I actually went to work at private equity. And a couple of years of doing that, I realized this is not what I wanted to do as a career. And so I moved to Argentina, and I lived in Argentina for a couple of years, and I learned Spanish, and I made a black and white movie. And through my journey of moving to Argentina and Miami, I met a very charismatic singer, and he convinced me that he had the next BC Boys / Bob Marley, hit. And so I ended up managing his band called Cripplefish. and had a great run, booking them up and down Sunset Strip at the Whiskey Go Go and all the Opium Den, and all the bars that were popular in the late '90s there, and just really loved it. Felt like whether or not they were recognized, I was following my passion and I loved what they were doing. But then that just self-destructed, and there was no way to
A bunch
sort
of
continue.
equipment got stolen at some point after 9/11.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
9/11
we
happens.
we had a recording studio that we built for these guys, floated on sand to minimize vibrations and, all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And we booked them a 3-day gig up in Mammoth. And the band was going to the Guitar Center to pick up picks and strings. And the lead singer at that point, those guys had their own internal fighting, and they saw him there at Guitar Center and said, okay, he's doing the same thing. And they drove up, the drummer and the bassist and the guitarist drove up to Mammoth. And unbeknownst to them, the lead singer never showed up. He was at the Guitar Center selling all the equipment from the studio, and got in the company car and called me from Texas saying, hey, I hope you don't mind. I tweaked out and I couldn't handle the pressure. And, so
that was it. And that was it. End of the band. Okay.
Yeah.
And then how does that play into the Hologenix story?
So at that point, and 4 days later was 9/11, and sitting on the side of the road. I guess there was no overnight parking, and a police officer pulled up and tapped on the window, sir, you can't park here. And I told him the story I just told you. And, he's like, okay, well, you can have another, hour here, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I my dad introduced me to David Hornick, and I just was like, wow, this is it. This is what I want to do. And
so it's kind of a low point for you. Like you were 9/11, all that stuff. It was just like, okay, I need a change in my life. It sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, there were a couple big inflection points over the last 22 years of running the company. So there's the 2008, 2009 timeframe. How did that period affect your business?
Well, obviously, there's a global sort of financial meltdown at that point. It was a lot harder to get brands to engage. They were more in a, protect their business. They're not looking to expand or to add new technologies. One of the things that we went through, our product originally was called Holo Fiber, as in a holistic fiber. But depending on your diction and where you were raised in the US, you would say hollow fiber. And then they would think it was like actually a hollow channel fiber, which exists for other applications. And so we realized that we needed to do a rebrand. So we actually launched CELLIANT in 2008, right in the middle of this. And CELLIANT is cell and reliant, because you're relying on your cells to power it. So that was a big undertaking. And we were able to sign some great brands at the time. And kind of launch under the CELLIANT umbrella. But that was sort of, one of the times of like, are we going to make it or not? And it was a big bet to say, all right, let's relaunch, let's rebrand, and put a, yeah.
And usually those things take a couple of years. So it's not like you can just turn on a dime if there's suddenly a big economic crisis. But, in retrospect, a lot of people say that these big companies started during downturns, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, stuff like that started during downturns. Looking back on it now, obviously you made it through those downturns, but was it really difficult for you doing a rebrand in the midst of this major economic downturn?
Absolutely, it was. In 5 or 10 years, or maybe now it looks obvious to people and they say, oh, great job. But, we had a lot of people telling us to shut down, to close shop, to just walk away and start something else. There's not a lot of market awareness around infrared. So we had that added challenge of educating the consumer so that they start looking for, so we start asking for infrared in our clothing. So yeah, that was a real sort of leap of faith.
Yeah. And then, Under Armour as a brand, I don't know when your partnership started with them, But it is a company that over the last 20 years has gained a lot of awareness, especially among professional athletes. So talk a little bit about the importance of those types of relationships with a large company like Under Armour. And I understand there's others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We originally met with them, I think, in 2010 or 2011, and they launched in 2018, I want to say. And so there's this whole period of validating the technology and really showing, substantiating our claims. And what I think helps them stand out among their peers is that they're really committed to innovation. And it's not like a gimmick or, coming up with a name. They really have a science behind what they're doing. And so having a brand like that really helps us get other brands like a KT Tape, where they see the legitimacy in what we're doing and the value. And you want to leverage all of those sort of rising tide lifts all boats to bring these diverse products to the consumer. So whether it's a shirt or, tape or a brace, Curad does a knee brace. You've got DFND that does sleepwear. Bear Mattress does bedding. Pure Care does sheets. Sleepletics does sheets. So we have a really wide brand footprint or product footprint through all those brand relationships. And then when you go beyond the U.S., about half of our business is international. Decathlon in Europe, they're the largest sports retailer. AEON in Asia is the largest retailer in Asia. So we've really been fortunate to get relationships with the leaders in their respective categories.
I'm really curious about this because as a company that was founded on innovation and developing a new technology in areas that have existed for a long time, shirts, clothing, sheets, how much of your energy and effort do you put into research and development of new products, new technologies, which of course is hard while you're also trying to build and scale up a company? How much of your time and energy and effort and budget do you put into that kind of R&D?
That's a really good question. And I think it's evolving for us. I mean, first, you're trying to show that your product works and does what it says. And then you're trying to make it easier to work with. You're trying to get the particles smaller. You're trying to get them to disperse better. You want to have different applications. So now we have a cellulose. So we have a natural fiber that's recyclable. We do now recyclable polyester through our relationship with Unify. And then looking forward, what is the next material? Is it an impact material? Is it a cooling material? Is it a heating material? So we want to be sure that we're investing in our science and how to apply it going forward while we're building out the applications for the core product. And, we've looked at things like agriculture, the effect of infrared and CELLIANT on how plants grow is incredible. So we now have an agricultural arm that we're developing. But it's important to continually try and build upon what you've done to get to a point where people are, expecting infrared in everything that they wear or sleep on. So that's something that you can, really never do enough of. We're constantly trying to reinvent ourselves, if you will.
And how does the product work in agriculture?
So in agriculture, if you think about indoor growing, and now they do a lot of hydroponics without soil, they have these vertical farms where they're using LED lights. When you add infrared into that system, you see an increase in plant yield. You see a decrease in the amount of water needed. You can look at all kinds of different markers for how to measure a benefit. But at the end of the day, plants really respond to the stimulus from infrared, and that creates a very visual response and reaction. And you can measure the yield of tomatoes from a crop and see an increase. We're seeing anywhere from a 10 to 30% increase in the amount of tomatoes, as an example, when you add CELLIANT media to the grow system.
So I'm just having trouble understanding. Is it like a cloth or a fabric that goes into the growing of the
Sure.
plants?
So if you've heard of rock wool, if you think of hydroponics, they will plant the seed in a synthetic, it looks like a foam, like a fiber foam.
Yes.
So if you wrap that foam or make that foam with CELLIANT, then the plant will increase its growth rate and its yield.
Oh, that's so cool. So as you look towards the future, and I'm mindful of the clock, I think we're nearing the end here. What other applications or areas are you looking at, or do you see potential for your technology for CELLIANT?
Well, the applications are almost limitless. If you look at people as a population and you say, if I increase circulation, does your health improve? It's almost unequivocally yes. What we're really focused on is awareness, because right now there's not that many people that understand this is out there, that they can use it and that will help them. So our mandate is to bring awareness of infrared, the benefits of infrared, and obviously specifically CELLIANT and what it can do for the average person listening, just me, this traditionally we're told if you want to get healthier, you have to eat better, exercise more, or sleep longer.
Or
and
take
what
a pill.
Or take a pill. And what we're offering is a solution that is passive. All you have to do is sleep in bed the way you normally would, get dressed the way you normally would, and you're going to have a benefit just by being able to harness your body's energy and direct infrared back into the body.
It is funny because here we are walking around in clothing most of the time probably made from cotton, which is the way it's been made for hundreds of years. And we haven't, in every other area of our life, from being online at all moments of the day, having a supercomputer in our pocket, all these different access to information, satellites in the sky. We've got all these different areas that we've innovated, and yet the clothing on our body, so many of us don't think about how that affects us. And as you said, it affects our circulation. It affects everything in the body.
And that's what we're trying to change. Typically you think of your clothing as a fashion piece to make you more comfortable, breathability, waterproof, Gore-Tex, moisture management. And we want people to start thinking about what can it do for their health and their wellness, and how can we improve your health and wellness through the products that you wear and use. And there hasn't been innovation in textiles really in a long time.
Yeah, interesting. Seth, this has been such an interesting conversation. I want to wrap up with the question I always ask, which is my gratitude question. I'm a big fan of expressing gratitude to those who helped you along the way, especially peers or contemporaries, however you want to define that. Who would you want to thank?
Well, thank you for that question. It's sort of the Academy Awards. You have this long list of everyone you want to thank. For me, I've had so many influential people that have just encouraged me to follow my path. And, I had an amazing teacher in high school, Dr. Levy, that, would quote Robert Frost. And, I chose the path less traveled, and that's made all the difference. And, for me, I don't have to look any further than my father. He's always supported me. He's been my biggest fan, been at all my games, always cheering me on, always evaluating me on my best day and not my worst day, which I think a lot of us get caught on, get stuck on the negative. And it's so important to look at what we can do when we're at our best. And my dad has always supported me and encouraged me and introduced me, to this company and created this opportunity for me. So he's the one that I hold up and admire to be.
Seth, thanks so much for your time. Where can people go to learn more about you and CELLIANT?
So CELLIANT.com is our website, and love people to come out or reach out on LinkedIn, Seth Casden, and you'll get a response from me. And thank you for your listeners and for having me on your show.
Seth, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.